Don't look now, but Tennessee is approaching their next phase under Josh Heupel. Check out their top 10 class from this last cycle. Not one, but both of their top recruits in that class. David Sanders, Isaiah Campbell, both trench monsters, respectively, on the offensive and defensive side, and both five-star cats. Means something now. It's a small sample size, but it means something, in this class being in the top 10 also means a little bit of something as well. We'll talk about that in relation to Tennessee and their future under Josh Heupel. But before we do that, y'all know what it is. If you're a Tennessee fan, if you're a college football junkie, lock in right here. Best way to be locked in, you ask? Of course, by subscribing to the On3 YouTube channel. Thank you. Thank you in advance for doing that for us. So when Josh Heupel gets the job at Tennessee, the way his offense is built, they were going to, what I would say, out-scheme the trenches against other teams in the SEC. And that worked, especially early on. The 2022 season, Hendon Hooker's throwing bombs, and Jalen Hyatt is winning the Blitnikoff, and it was good vibes. Not to say they didn't run the football well, but that was how they made you pay, with the wide splits, isolating defenders in space, and picking their matchup and picking it to the deficit of your defense. That's all well and good. And to me, it was and still is the plan for Tennessee in a lot of respect. Josh Heupel's not changing the way that he runs his offense, schematically speaking. But I think for Tennessee, that was in large part phase one of this whole operation. The next phase of Tennessee football under Josh Heupel was, okay, when we scheme around the trenches, that's great, but can we have a situation where we can out-scheme your trenches, but also have the price of admission in the trenches to compete with the big boys in the SEC? You beat Alabama when Alabama arguably has better line of scrimmage play than you. Why? Because you could out-scheme them. But what if, speaking to 2022 Tennessee fans here, what if you lived in a world where you were not just good enough, but arguably as good as anyone else in the conference up front for the foreseeable future? That's, I think, the goal here now for Tennessee moving forward, and that's what this top 10 class is. I mentioned David Sanders. I mentioned Isaiah Campbell. Both of those individuals, I believe, are signal torch kind of signees for what Josh Heupel Tennessee teams are going to be. And quite frankly, I think you're able to land both those individuals because of what they were last season and kind of having that inkling of what they were even the year before. Tennessee has been a gritty operation up front, both offensively and defensively, but it really came into final form last year, especially on the defensive side. You land Isaiah Campbell, you flip him from Clemson. Again, this is the five-star defensive lineman. And that's awesome. Do you do that if James Pierce doesn't have the year that he's had? Do you do that if you're not one of the top 5 rush defenses in America? You have proof of concept. You have this marketable product of your defensive line and your front seven saying, hey, listen, you want to come to Tennessee? Awesome. This is what we're about. We're not pitching you on the projection. We're telling you this is what we are right now. You're a 5-star cat. You can step in here and have an impact. Let's go. On the offensive side, the offensive line had their struggles in pass protection, and you can pin that on a bunch of different things. But when it comes to running the football, Josh Heupel is going to pound the rock. In each of the last 2 years, they've had a 1,000-yard rusher. Last year, they led the SEC in rushing, over 200 yards a game. So you added David Sanders, and I'm not telling you that was the only reason they added him. We've spoken about NIL and things of that nature in Tennessee as a whole in their direction, but I do think now having something that you can pitch a David Sanders on with how they're built up front and how they're going to be built up front here going forward. Was that the end-all, be-all? I don't know, but I don't think it hurt. I don't think it hurt. And so when I zoom out just beyond 2025, we'll talk about 2025 in a second here, but when I look at Tennessee and their future, I feel like they have a lot of the big puzzle pieces more or less in a place of confidence if I'm a Tennessee fan. The line of scrimmage, what I just spoke to, I feel like they're going to have what they need there for the foreseeable future, as long as Josh Heupel's the head coach and as long as they keep recruiting at this clip, coming off of the best class Josh Heupel's had at Tennessee. The other thing we know about Josh Heupel, he's going to have quarterback talent. Now, Nico Iamaleava, I get it, last year wasn't the year that we all probably expected from him because expectations were as high as they've been when you talk about his talent. But that's just the thing, right? He came to Tennessee as the number 1 player in America out of high school. This past cycle, they landed George McIntyre, another high-profile quarterback, not just in his region in Nashville, but like nationally. Dude's a high-profile quarterback. And so if you're telling me, okay, you'll have quarterback talent and have more than what you need on the line of scrimmage for the next however many years under Josh Heupel, those are the two biggest pieces. You're working on 20 to 25% of the other things that you need on your roster. Skill players on the perimeter. Obviously, you got to have it in the secondary as well. But to me, it's just a matter of, okay, can we have it all line up for us any given season and have it all work the way that we need it to work? Last year, I spoke about Nico and what he didn't bring to the table. Tennessee still won 10 games and made the college football playoff. If they don't draw Ohio State, the eventual national champion, in the first round in Columbus, does Tennessee maybe get a little bit of momentum and they can maybe win that first game and maybe they have a favorable draw the next game? Think about it this way. If you gave Tennessee Penn State's path in the college football playoff, probably beat both those teams that Penn State had to play and Boise State and SMU. Just my feel on this thing. So when we talk about Tennessee here in 2025, would you like Nico to take that next step? Yes, and I've been very vocal about this. I think that is the hinge point, if you will, for them recreating success in 2025 and even going further than where they were in 2024. But it's not just a Nico thing. It's also the receiver play. It's also the offensive line and the pass game getting synced up. It's also everybody staying healthy. It's Nico being completely on time within the offense. So I think that's all possible. But even if it doesn't happen that way, we've seen there's a high floor for this football team because of the line of scrimmage, the attitude and the identity they now have under Josh Heupel. And it's funny to say this because it looks different than the team's going to compare them to, but Tennessee, to me, kind of has a similar formula to what I think Michigan has done historically. Run the gosh darn football. Notre Dame, same thing. And it's not that that's all you depend upon, but if it's run the ball and then have something off of that in the pass game with what you have in the quarterback play and with hopefully what you can develop and have step up here and emerge in your wide receiver room, Tennessee's going to be a force. So sure, 2025 maybe has some unknowns, some question marks, but I look at the future under Josh Heupel. To me, I think you got to now speak about Tennessee when you have those tier 1 categories in the SEC. I think they'll have what they need to compete with the Bamas in the future. Obviously, they've beaten Bama 2 out of the last 3 years under Josh Heupel. To compete with the LSUs and the Georgias here in the future. That, to me, is where Tennessee is rounding into form. And you got the head coach to do it. The coach who's won double-digit games 2 out of the last 3 years, you got the guy to get it done. And I think now as they're moving into this phase where they're going to have the right trench play, Tennessee's not going anywhere. I'm not telling you to win the national championship next year, but I do think in the SEC, they are firmly for me in that Tier 1 discussion, and I am very, very encouraged to see them take these steps and excited to see what it ends up being here the next few years under Josh Heupel. So, Tennessee fans, again, subscribe. Let me know what you think about this top 10 class that Josh Heupel just landed from the 2025 cycle. For Cato on the 1s and 2s, for myself, JD PicKell, we appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We will keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time.